So welcome to the EU Circular Talks with the topic Green Digital Passport, Product Traceability to Create Circular Material Loops. My name is Andreas Nobel and I'm representing TCO Certified, a global sustainability certification covering IT products. Together with me and the TCO Certified, we're hosting this event with GS1, EIT Circular Economy Community, and European Circular Economy Stakeholder Platform. During this event, you will be able to send in questions through the chat function. We will have limited time to answer these questions. So I want to inform you that there is a LinkedIn group that you can join for the EU Circular Talks, where you will be able to ask your questions and then receive written comments on them. For all speakers, please remember to adhere to your time slot. I will give you a minute's notice when your time is almost up. So without further ado, why are we here? What are we going to talk about? So if you saw my LinkedIn post, you might recognize this picture. It's showing the different SDGs and the current situation we're in. And you might notice what stands out in this picture. If not, I'm gonna help you see. So the problem that we are currently facing, which is one of the biggest problems, is for SDG 12 and SDG 13, which is sustainable, responsible consumption and production, and climate action. And the trend for these two SDGs are not looking that great. They are actually getting worse. And we will be talking about solutions or possible solutions for these two SDGs today. So what we're currently seeing today with data sharing and knowledge sharing is that it is partial only. We only talk to the ones next to us in the supply chain most of the time. And this creates something called partial traceability. We're not able to connect the dots throughout the supply chain. But with a digital passport or full traceability, this would become a reality, because then we would be able to create new interesting functions and systems and services that would allow us to share our products, use materials and resources more efficiently, so we can transition into a more circular future. And that's basically what it's all about if we want to tackle the climate crisis that we're currently in. So during this talk, we will have 8 different speakers that will be discussing what is going on in the European Union connected to digital passports. We will be talking about the legal aspects of data sharing. We will handle how we can support the implementation of digital passports, how it can look like in practice, technical solutions that will run these systems, and then also talk about the need for collaboration in between industries. So without further ado, I would like to welcome Dumitru Fornea, Delegate of the Consultative Commission on Industrial Change, short CCMIE, and Rapporteur on Critical Raw Materials and Resilience, up to the stage. Please.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you very much, Mr. Nobel, for this introduction. First and foremost, I want to thank the organizer for bringing forward this important topic today. As was said, my name is Dumitru Fornea, and I am a member of the European Economic and Social Committee. The transition to a circular economy is essential for a more sustainable and more robust European economy. Recognizing the need to bring stakeholders from the field in one place, the European Commission, the European Economic and Social Committee, launched a joint initiative known as the European Circular Economy Stakeholder Platform, which is today's event co-host. As many of you may already be aware, the platform is a European one-stop shop for the circular economy community. It is a place for dialogue and a bridge between existing circular economy initiatives. In fact, all content in this one-stop shop for the circular economy in Europe comes from you, the stakeholders, with the debate continuously being nourished online through our communication channels such as Twitter, LinkedIn, and our newsletter. As the exchange concept of the European Circular Economy Stakeholder Platform, the EU Circular Talks are the ideal forum for stakeholders to come together and exchange their ideas and practices in specific fields, such as the digital product passport. This is exactly what the Commission and the European Economic and Social Committee had in mind when they launched the European Circular Economy Stakeholder Platform. 4 years ago, what is a platform facilitated by the European level, but driven by stakeholders on the ground. This is why the initiative by GS1 and TCO to focus this EUCT on the digital product passport is particularly welcome. Apart from its active role in the European Circular Economy Stakeholder Platform, the ESCC acts as a driver for sustainability while identifying the barriers through its opinions. In its role as a consultative body to the EU institution, the ESCC organizes thematic exchanges with a wide range of civil society actors and prepares opinion on issues related to the circular economy, drawing on input from experts in the employers, workers, and various interest groups. One example is the European Economic and Social Committee's opinion on critical raw materials, for which I was rapporteur. In this context, I want to mention the particular role of the Commission to plan consistent and constant investment in research and development to foster substitution and a market for secondary raw materials. In the opinion, we also stressed that the mapping of potential raw materials coming from EU West and stocks that the Commission has foreseen for 2022 is an absolute priority and needs to be carried out as soon as possible. Lastly, both in the opinion and during follow-up event on 13 July 2021, we have expressed the sense of urgency that civil society associates with the revision of the waste shipment regulation, now postponed to this autumn. We have already clearly stated that for us, the EU should work towards allowing the export of waste containing valuable materials only when useful in terms of sustainability and when at destination, the environmental and social standards and measures to mitigate climate effects are equivalent to EU standards. These messages are in full coherence with the recommendations we have also recently made concerning sustainability requirements for batteries, where among other things, we have called for the introduction of the concept of end use in addition to end of life in order to promote the reuse, refurbishing, or second life and recycling of batteries. Beyond the ESCC's work, public authorities and business associations, for instance, can help develop economic incentives to transition to the circular economy adapted specifically to foster the development of practical initiatives such as digital product passport. I see Noble it's already preparing to end. Without further information, I just want to say that we have a lot of good practices initiative, and we have the DNP project, the Convert project, which is a startup company. We have this very interesting example from Volvo Cars, EV battery materials traceability, Heiser projects, and so on. So we stay tuned to all the developments in this platform, and of course we will support all the efforts in order to better awareness among the public and the institution regarding the importance of the circular economy. Thank you very much, Noble.
Thank you so much, Dimitru. So we're moving on to Ignacio, European Institute of Innovation and Technology, short EIT community. So please take the floor. Time is yours.
Thank you, Andreas. I'm trying to switch on my camera, but it seems that it's not working.
We can hear you fine, so
okay.
It's okay.
So, okay, I will go without camera. It's not a problem. So, thank you, Andreas. My name is Ignacio Calleja, Senior Advisor for Circular Economy and Recycling at EIT Materials, but I am also coordinator of the Cross-Kick Circular Economy Community. This cross-KIC circular economy community is composed by 6 of the 8 existing KICs knowledge and innovation communities in Europe, supported by the European Institute for Innovation and Technology. This initiative is coordinated by EIT Raw Materials with the participation of EIT Climate KIC, EIT Digital, EIT Food, EIT Urban Mobility, and EIT Manufacturing. So as you see, there is a very, very important representation of the KICs community in this cross-KIC circular economy community. So it's clear that for all the KICs, circular economy is one of the priorities. Each of the KICs is independently working in supporting different activities going to an efficient implementation of circular economy in Europe. But at the same time, we have this cross-KIC action trying to strengthen the collaboration and trying to improve the collaboration between the different KICs towards circular economy implementation. For us, it's absolutely a priority and a very important aspect, the development and implementation of green digital passports. We consider this option as a very important one to get an efficient implementation of circular economy. And we have some examples from our side supporting the development of these tools. In the case of EIT Raw Materials, for example, we have already supported through one of our business support initiatives, one of the companies participating in this event. Okay, and we have already included a specific topic in our Circular Societies Prize for 2021. So when we talk about the KICs, we have different supporting mechanisms. So we have in most of them, we have specific calls for innovation projects. We have a specific call for education. And when we talk about education, we are referring not only to higher education, but also to lifelong learning and wider society learning. And we know, and we have examples of for example, wider society learning projects incorporating the concept of green digital passports. So increasing the awareness of this tool within the consumers. Because we think that, okay, it's very important to have a very clear idea of this concept among the policymakers, industry, SMEs, NGOs, but it's absolutely essential to also incorporate the concept of digital passport in the consumers. They should know about this concept, and they should claim to use this tool for marketing the different products. So from our side, just nothing else, just to remind you that if you go to the different websites of the KICs, you will be able to find different ways of supporting the development of this kind of tools. So thank you, Andreas.
Thank you. Just a quick question. We have some time left. So what type of support is it that different, startups or entrepreneurs or whatever it might be that want support can get? Is it financial support or is it some other type of support?
Not only financial support. I better know the options from EIT Raw Materials, but as I told you, you have business support options in every KIC. So in our case, we provide not only financial support. In our case, most of the startups applying for our call, the main problem for them is to reach the final customers, to reach big companies. For them, it's not so easy to reach those companies. So we support them to establish contacts with the final customers. And not only that, we also support them developing the business model. So it's not only financial support, it's much more than financial support. And let me to tell you that in some cases, I think that for them or for some of them, it's much more important to facilitate the access to the customers than the financial support.
So it would be great if you could link. I see in the chat box that there's questions about what is a KIC. Could you link to the KIC website?
No problem.
Please go ahead and do this in the LinkedIn group and we can continue the discussion there, because if we do it in the LinkedIn group, it will be for everyone to see instead of just having it in this chat window, because that will, disappear after this talk. So
sure.
thank you so much for that. We will move on in this schedule, and now we're gonna have Paulo da Silva Lemos, Policy Officer, Sustainable Products and Plastics from DG Environment.
Hello, good morning.
Hi.
Thank you for the invitation. So as you know, the Commission has a strong mandate to advance with the digital product passport, not green product passport, because this is the vaccination passport. So we call it digital product passport.
Yep.
And both the Green Deal, the Circular Economy Action Plan, but also the European Data Strategy, and also the Digital Decade Communication adopted in March 2022. They speak about the need to have a product passport, and the objectives of the product passport is essentially to circulate more information through the value chain, and also from the to the consumers and to the authorities of the different countries and member states, and also EU institutions. And the objectives of the product passport is to provide more information on sustainability and circularity of the products, to provide economic operators with information, technical and sustainable information. For instance, more and more the final retailers, for instance, they want to know if the product they are offering to the consumers is sustainable. So they need to know along the value chain what are the impacts of the product. This could be used by the product passport to promote value retaining operations. That is fundamental for the implementation of the circular economy, and also for the SPI, the Sustainable Product Initiative. For instance, sharing services, reverse logistics, predictive maintenance, reuse, repair, refurbishment, recovery of components, materials, and recycling. Also, to allow those that are putting more sustainable and circular products on the market to reap the advantage of it by providing this credible and verifiable data to the consumers. Also to support market surveillance authorities in carrying out their tasks. Provide the Commission and national authorities with up-to-date information when preparing or reviewing product-related legislation. Support a smooth circulation of goods in the single market. Contribute to a more sustainable and circular economy in Europe. And also to give the industry the advantage of being prime movers in this area. We launched this initiative at EU level, but we are already seeing a great interest from other countries in what we are doing. Actually, it's more usually it's like that. I remember Vice President Katainen in the former Commission saying that the European Union is a regulation powerhouse, meaning that we adopt legislation and standards that then are followed by other countries, by most of the countries, and this allows us to have an advantage, for our companies to have an advantage, a competitive advantage of being the prime movers in this area. So some ideas on DPP business case. So for the companies, the digital product passport can help tracking the raw materials, the extraction, the production. Like this, they can support due diligence efforts, also related with social aspects like child labor, slavery, and this could provide all this information to along the value chain and to the authorities and to the consumers. To enable manufacturers to create product digital twins, and with this to see how the product is developing. Tracking the life story of a product, enabling the services related with remanufacturing, with these new business models associated with remanufacturing, repairability, second life, the question of using instead of buying the product, and that are new business models associated with the circular economy. also to make the citizens available and to make the information available to the citizens on the sustainability of the products, and they can choose, make a informed decision on the product they are buying based on the sustainability. And what is the state of play of the digital product passport? As you know, the digital product passport will be integrated in the SPI, the Sustainable Product Initiative, that is scheduled by adoption by the college in the last quarter of 2021. We have already charged the consultant that is doing the study for the SPI to a specific task on product passport. We are working with a lot of DGs. A lot of DGs are involved in the discussion of the circular product passport: DG Grow, DG Connect, DG Just, DG NR, DG Grow, and DG Environment. We are working with consultants. We are also having stakeholder consultations. There was a stakeholder workshop in July or June.
We need to start rounding off now, Paulo. Sorry. Your time is up, Paulo. We need to start rounding off.
And so after the presentation of the proposal in the SPI in 2022, we'll define the scope, the infrastructure, and technical characteristics of the passport in order to implement this initiative. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Paulo. So with that, I imagine there will be a lot of questions to Paulo as well. Now I've accepted everyone into the LinkedIn group that applied for it. So please do post your questions over there so we don't lose them in the ether, so to speak. Next up, we have Christian de Cuna, works in the Data Policy and Innovation Unit of DG Connect in the European Commission. He's currently working on the implementation of the data strategy, in particular the preparation of the Data Act proposal. Please, Christian, the floor is yours.
Well, thank you very much for inviting me on this important discussion. The last speaker in this session, so I'm going to be very brief. I just wanted to give you an overview.
You have 5 minutes. It's okay. Go ahead.
Yeah. Well, I wanted to talk about the general strategy of the EU and the European Commission on digitalization and supporting the green transition through digital and through data, and in particular, the data strategy and the Data Act, which I'm working on. It's the idea is to try to benefit from what we see as the second wave of industrial data, an enormous explosion of data expected in the coming years. 4 or 5 times more than we have at the moment, expected to be generated in the next 5 or 6 years. Now, we believe that we need data to create and to innovate and to grow sustainably. So the various initiatives, including the Sustainable Product Initiative mentioned by Paulo, and some of the more economic, if you like, initiatives which we're working on, are all about trying to empower businesses and consumers and the public sector to make better decisions and use data for the social and economic good, and environmental towards and serving the environmental agenda as well. Having said how much data is going to be created, it's a shocking fact that most of the data is not actually used to generate value. Up to 80% or even 90% of the data which is sitting in servers is not being put to good use, and most companies are not getting value from the data that they generate and that they collect. What companies tell us consistently, big and small, is that data sharing is a good thing, but the larger companies say that it voluntary entry into contracts is enough, the smaller players say that they can't get the data through contracts. So what we know is that there is enormous potential for using data for the economy and for the environment, but the reality is that the data sharing isn't happening within and between economic sectors. Now, in terms of the potential, I'll give you 2 or 3 examples. If consumers were able to access data from their devices and have it analyzed by a service provider of their choice, stakeholders estimate that could lead to a 75% cost reduction for maintenance and repair. That could lead to a doubling of repair rates and a 20% increase in the lifetime of durable goods. So this would reduce the environmental impact of these durable goods by 20%. That's one example. The second example is in take one sector of the economy, very important in Europe, construction. Analytical tools which collect data through sensors and turn them into actionable information about failures, for example, about insulation and barriers to vapor. That could reduce construction waste by 500 million tons every year in Europe. A third example is, if businesses had access to logistics data, emissions data related to logistics, they could reduce their carbon footprint by up to 50%. And we have real life examples of that happening. A shoe manufacturer has reported that recently. So these are just examples of how much potential there is if data bottlenecks could be unlocked. Now, the initiatives.
1 minute.
1 minute. Well, the initiatives that we're working on include the Sustainable Product Initiative. There's also money which is going to be available in the new financial period for supporting data spaces and the European data space for smart circular applications. And then finally, what I'm working on, the Data Act, and all of these things that I've talked about, we're going to try to unlock this potential for the use of data in the scenarios of business to business relations, business to consumer, and also to business to government, which isn't directly the concern of this session, but it is directly of interest to the Green New Deal and trying to get hold of data in order to combat the climate crisis. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Christian. Interesting data. We got some questions in the chat looking for the references for these numbers. Would you be able to post the underlying data in the LinkedIn group later on? You don't need to do it right away, but it would be very much appreciated if you could do so.
Sure.
Thank you. All right, now we actually have a few minutes for some Q&A. I myself do have some questions, but I would like to give the floor to you, the listeners, the participants. If you have questions, please do post them. I'll have a look in the LinkedIn group if anyone has gotten around to post anything there. Let me see. I don't think so yet. I've just been accepting people. So I'll go ahead and ask some questions. Here's one. Martin, when will the EU drop more specifications on the passport? Would you like to comment on that one, Paolo? Since you're involved in the SPI effort, and maybe you could also answer the question, what do you think will be put in the EU into the Eco Design Directive, and what do you think will be proposed to become additional legislation?
Yes, so the SPI that will be presented by the end of this year will contain already some ideas of what will be the digital product passport and what products, because we're still discussing what kind of products should start with the product passport. There is no decision on that, so but a good reference is the strategic key value chains that were identified in the Circular Economy Action Plan, but still to be discussed. And following the SPI, there has to be implementation, and that will go. We still don't know what kind of instrument, but we will do it in the year 2022. The concrete specifications of the architecture of the product passport will be defined in 2022. Yeah.
Thank you. Do we have other questions that we would like to address? Otherwise, I do have one question to you, Christian Kuna. I'm wondering about potential legal hoops that could come into play with the digital passports, or obstacles that we might need to solve with the aspects of legislation and things like that. Like what do you foresee being hurdles that we might run into in the future with these digital passports from a data perspective? Think of GDPR and these types of things. Could there be potential things that would be similar with the digital passports?
Well, as Paolo said, the discussions are still taking place internally about the scope of the digital product passports. What products and materials would be within scope, and what the categories of data which would be held by which would be encoded within the products. So I think it's too early to say that there is sensitivity amongst companies. You have governance of data is complex. You have personal data, which is actually my background. Then you have IP law, you have trade secrets, and so where you have the database directive, there are all of these instruments that we're navigating right now. But I think there is flexibility within the framework if you have a strong justification and proportionality that you can demonstrate, then I think there's the potential to do what we need to do to ensure circular economy becomes a reality.
So you think the leaders will listen to reason to sort of?
If you look at just the European Parliament and what they've been producing, the political will is there. We're looking to see what the president of the Commission is going to announce today in the State of the Union address. I think she's speaking now. But yeah, I mean, this is the top priority for us now.
It sounds promising, at least. It sounds promising. We have a question from Francesca. Will a specific impact assessment be launched on the product passport? Does anyone feel that they have an answer for this? Da Silva? Paolo, you're raising your hand?
Yes, the impact assessment of the SPI will include a section on the impact assessment of the product passport.
All right, great. So with that, I would like to move on to the next case presentation. Martin Willers, CEO and co-founder of Transparent Speakers. Please, the floor is yours, and go ahead and share your presentation. Great, thank you so much.
Hi, so can you see me?
Yes, thank you.
Awesome. Well, my name is Martin. I have founded this company called Transparent, and I want to tell you about how we're embracing this idea of the product passport. In fact, it's a core strategy. Let me see. We make these speakers, and we try to make them as timeless modular electronics. And the reason for that is the single most important thing we can do as an electronics actor is to reduce the environmental footprint, I should say, is to elongate the lifetime of a product that we put in the marketplace. So the first thing we have addressed is to make everything repairable and be able to provide updates in form of modules for the wireless connections. The second thing that's interesting about our company is that we've been crowdfunded for our first 3 products. So we've been able to put them on a Kickstarter, a crowdfunding site, and got around 500 backers, around 150,000 euros for each product before we put them into manufacturing. And that has built a DNA in the company where we are very transparent, or unusually transparent, with our product development process. So our vision for the company is to be the first circular tech brand. And we achieve that by following our purpose, which is to make the timeless modular electronics. But more important to this call, to be transparent in the full sense of the name, being open but also traceable and true, which are big ambitions as an electronics company. And finally, we want to offer circular services that further enable the road to a circular tech brand. So today I'll be talking about the transparency part of this, and this is where the product passport come in. So to be this transparent, we have wanted to up the game for this, our third permanent product called the Light Speaker. And we found the KEEP project in Sweden, which is a 2-year research project looking into how to build a prototype for a traceability system, such as the product passport that we're talking about today. So let me dig in from an entrepreneur point of view. We built the company now to a 2 million euro turnover. We're 9 employees with 1 in a daughter company in the US. So quite a global starting point for a small company. So let me dig into how we have addressed this. The first thing I do as an entrepreneur is just to see how far I can get by myself. So dismantling the entire product, putting it on my table, weighting all the parts, and then sending this Excel sheet to our manufacturing partner and saying, am I guessing the right material here? Getting sometimes specific answers and sometimes not. Then looking for what's the actual environmental impact of these different materials. I found this free app that's developed by a university here in Europe, where you could put in the ABS plastic and get a carbon footprint, a life cycle analysis of that kind of material. This will be a rough estimate, but within a day, you know, I could actually have a carbon footprint of this product. Took me half a day to weight it and half a day to sort of put the data together. So I think that's very inspiring in terms of democratizing like a carbon footprint. And this is something that I really hope that this sort of product passport will lead to a broader level. So am I really happy about these 16 kilos of carbon footprint per product? Well, the data I'm using is very rough, right? So the PCB is based on a laptop and not a speaker. It has a higher density, so it's not completely true. So you know, to build this prototype into a beta thing that we want to release to the world, we want to go to the next level and do a LCA following the ISO standard. So then it becomes too hard for me to do. So then you have to employ a lifecycle analysis expert using a software. Actually, the software database is very similar to the one that I used in the free app. So that doesn't change that much, but the rigorousness in following up changes. So that's 12,000 euros. I'm putting some numbers here so you see the scale of the cost for us. Then it turns out the manufacturing partner does not believe that this will be an EU standard, and they think we are very weird for asking these questions. So after a lot of negotiations over several months, they charged us 10,000 euros one-time non-reoccurring engineering cost to do this research with their suppliers. And after some time, they signed an NDA with the LCA experts, so we're not privy to all the information they're sharing. So that's the current state of where we are with the life cycle analysis. But there are a lot of other things we want to put in this passport. We put a lot of money, actually 54,000 euros, in just different sort of certifications and compliances measurements. So in EU, we're welcome, you know, works with the CE, which is a pretty good and broad brand, but there's a lot of other ones that use very similar testing reports that cost us a lot of money to come out to an international market. So you can see here I added up some of the costs. But addressing a product passport, I think it's very interesting with something like the WE directive, because this has also been an ongoing process this year. It turns out, you know, that it's a lot of paperwork. So you have to find someone that does all the paperwork for you as a small company. That costs 8,500 euros. But then you discover all these annoying things as an entrepreneur that eats your time and effort. So in Austria, for example, we have to get the documents just to sign over the reporting notarized. So that's 2 hours out of my day and 60 euros out of pocket to a lawyer in Stockholm just to get that document notarized. Then in France, they have invented their own recycling logo that you have to specifically put on the box. Not a huge problem because we can have that on all the boxes. But then in Spain, they're using the green dot as a legislation demand for the recycling. And the green dot is a big problem because that's owned by an intellectual IP umbrella firm that charges you for every single market. So that can easily become many thousands of euros. So then we have to put a specific sticker, yes, for the Spanish market, which will add a lot of problems for us. So that's just some examples of how to dig into this as an entrepreneur. So, but we are now producing the product as we're speaking, and we'll be shipping it out in November. And the QR code on the bottom will follow the ISO standard that this project has investigated, and it will launch you to a prototype of the Keep traceability platform on our webpage with the serial number, and you'll be able to follow the product for its entire lifetime. How many minutes do I have left, Andreas?
You have 3 minutes and 33 seconds.
I thought I was on pretty good pace.
Yeah, you're going good.
Yeah. So my main question is, sitting previously on the board of the Swedish Industrial Design Organization, a big challenge for designers is getting their IP protected. And there's been a lot of developments over the last 5 years where it's now only 450 euros to register your trademark in 27 countries for a startup. And that means that, my trademark can be both protected for speakers, but also renting out speakers, for example. So, if you compare that to the costs I just said, which easily runs up to 100,000 euros, which is actually 5% of our turnover this year, it's quite a hindrance for an entrepreneur to become sustainable in using the product passport if you just use the best practices currently available. So, my challenge to the panel today and to open up a good discussion from a small, medium enterprise entrepreneur perspective is to say, how can we get it to 450 euros? That's 100 times cheaper. And that will not be a hindrance. And taking, 5% of our turnover, probably most startups has less turnover than us. So I wanted to provide that perspective today. Thank you so much. This is my face trying to do a product passport. Feel free to reach out and ask me about the other challenges involved in doing something like this, because there are many more that I didn't talk about today. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Martin. So we actually have 2 minutes left. So I would like to just ask you some questions. What other different potential do you see with implementing the product passport for you as a company? Are there other things than just legislation that you will be able to cut costs on, or do you think it will be, a potential for your customers using this product passport in other ways than you mentioned?
Well, there's two perspectives. One, I wanted to use this to actually get to the core of true sustainability, actually understanding your impact and using it as a leverage for my supply chain. And that has worked semi-well. They ended up charging us money, and we were so committed that we could only, pay more money and get quite a little leverage from it. So that's the one part. The other part, of course, is leading the change, and that's the customer-facing perspective. And there's hundreds of green stamps and foots and leaves circulating on products, confusing the consumers. I think there's a high demand for tell it like it is perspective. So that's why I wanted to start with the carbon footprint. But I think to us, even being a sustainably minded company called Transparent, not all our consumers care about this. So we really need, the next step for us is to really bundle this to something that's a great user experience, so we can tell a story that our consumers will care about. And for us, that's really telling us that we care more about the linear, more about the circular than the linear. So for example, down the road, will we create more value in a product that we can trace and say, this is being pre-loved, this was manufacturing this day. More we can tell that story in a meaningful way and tell them how much love we put into refurbishing it and polishing it up for them to recirculate it, and how good our recycled aluminum and glass is for this particular purpose. Then I think we create a strong brand and a strong customer relationship, going beyond what we today look in e-commerce called customer lifetime value into something in a circular economy we could call product lifetime value. So how can a company extract money from a product several times over its lifetime, and how can a company extend that lifetime? I think those are the business values. So the first prototype we're building will be adding 1 year of warranty by entering your email. And this is a lot of business value, because if you sell to channels like Amazon, we don't typically get that data. So there you have that data perspective that we were mentioning in a previous talk.
Yeah, thank you so much, Martin. Next up, we have Teresa Oberhauser, EU project lead for the company Circularize. Please do share your screen if you have a presentation, Teresa, and we'll happily be listening in to your talk. Also, Martin, you can turn off your camera and mute your microphone.
Switch off over here.
Do we have you on the line, Teresa? Let me check.
Sorry, that was my microphone still muted, as usual.
Now we can hear you.
We all know the struggle. Thank you so much.
Okay, you want to share your screen?
Yes, I will in a second. I first would like to really thank Martin for this really great presentation, and to really see, really seeing what is happening on really the SME basis when it comes to traceability. Now let me see if I can full screen my screen.
It's great that we still have a picture of Martin up there at least.
Awesome. Okay. There we go.
All right, perfect. Now we can see it. Thank you.
Yes, awesome. Okay, to be honest, I had a very different start to my presentation, but I just found it amazing what Martin just mentioned, and I just want to jump right on the same topic. My name is Teresa Oberhauser. I'm from the company Circularize. We are a startup from the Netherlands, and we build a supply chain communication platform. We bring transparency to global supply chains and empower businesses to take steps towards a circular economy. And I think, I don't know which slide it was, I think it was slide number 8, which really sparked my my moods there, because there was really, Martin was explaining how he was making basically an Excel table with material types and sending it back and forth with his supply chain stakeholders to find out if the material they're using is actually that type of material. And then he was getting back information, he was not getting back some other information. And that is literally basically what our company focuses on.
Because I know.
The problem is, I mean, of course, the data exists on the different parts of the product, but it exists and it is scattered along the supply chain. And we're still emailing Excel tables back and forth about this. That's literally one of the most time-consuming things, as also Martin has pointed out. I think money is one thing, but also time consumption of the people. We talk to big plastic companies that say they have literally people in their company. They do nothing but translation of basically material types from one system to the other. And that's one of the problems really here. If we want circular economy, and if we want certification and safety characteristics of the products, we need information about the material and the material composition. And for that, we of course need to see the supply chain. So we need information about who are the supply chain stakeholders. What is the data that companies are most scared about sharing because it protects their IP, it protects their competitive advantage and their stance in the market? Material composition and suppliers. So we have this basically game where we need the maximum of it, but at the same time needing the maximum protection for corporates for companies in order to make this possible. That is basically the main assumption that our company was built on, that if we want to really achieve this maximum transparency on materials, it will be much easier if we can find a technology, if we can find a solution that makes it possible to protect the things that companies are scared about, that we can actually encourage companies to share this kind of information because they know that the bits and pieces of their bill of material that are actually a part of their competitive advantage and their secret recipe for something specific, that they can remain protected while they can share as much as possible. And that's basically what Circularize focuses on. So we basically started 5 years ago based on a master thesis at the Technical University Delft, where people really went into recycling facilities to see how things are still dismantled manually. Then obviously the second part is circularity, and supply chain information is not just about recycling, but there's a lot of actually positive pressure in the market right now towards more of that transparency. We see more and more companies using recycled content, using bio-based materials and so on. This is something that is great, that is a market effect that is leading in the right direction of sharing more information, using more circular things. But first of all, we need, of course, more transparency about what does it actually mean if it says bio-based and recycled and so on, because it is not clear and we don't know the exact recycled content and so on. And secondly, we also have to really make sure that kind of quality criteria and that material information can be certified as such, because customers are actually, depending on the sector, willing to pay up to 15% more for the same products if they know it is actually more sustainable or recycled. But that's obviously only possible if they really can prove that information. I mean, the textile sector is one of the most important ones, but we can also see that across other sectors, that extra economic value for companies can actually only be unlocked if there is an actual certification for that. And obviously, legislation is a very important driver for that as well. Circorize is a company that started in the plastics and polymer sector, but we already work across a variety of industries. We are currently in the EIC community of the European Union, of the European Commission, because we've won the EIC Accelerator, basically an excellent scaling project of the European Commission, and some further fundings, for example, in the framework of EIT raw materials. And indeed, what we address is the issue of not just the digitization of the process of communicating data along the supply chain, but also making it safer. So what we do is, next to the physical supply chain that you see on the left-hand side, we basically build a digital twin of that physical supply chain on our system, which is a blockchain-based communication system that relies on smart contracts. And what we do there is basically we attach the material information that is not attached to the actual physical product to that digital twin on our system. And then when the material gets transferred further in the supply chain, so does the material information. So what we do is basically with a mass balance system, we can then prove at the end of the chain that there is 10%, 15%, 20% recycled content. Obviously, recycled content is just where we started. That's something that we basically implemented in MVP stage last year, but we are now already in the framework of grants and also beyond that in private business corporations, also communicating actual bill of material information as well. Just to give you an example, one of the easiest steps that were added after the recycled content is, of course, information about life cycle assessment content, for example, what kind of CO2 equivalent per kilos and so on is in each part of the product, whether the locations, whether the logistics costs and so on. And the next step that we are already working on and have been piloting with a variety of companies is basically the actual full bill of material information. How we do that, we use a mass balance system. So basically not identity preserving, where you can literally say this product was exactly the product at the start of the line. It's a mass balance system where you have what you put in at the start comes out at the end. There's no possibility to cheat with basically quantities, but it's not as basically vague as certificate trading, which you know from planting trees in order to basically offset the carbon footprint of your last flight on your holidays. So the last example, just to make it a bit more graspable, the last example we had was a pilot with Porsche, where we worked with a variety of stakeholders in the supply chain of Porsche to basically trace materials in their supply chain. What you see on the bottom is basically the supply history. And on the right-hand side, that's basically, in that case, the mobile app, but there's also an online app where you can basically then see the connection of the main product and the components of that have been supplied by the suppliers on the bottom. What our system does tremendously different from the current situation is that it is decentralized on a blockchain-based system, which means at the current stage, the OEM is the one who's responsible of reporting, who's responsible of communicating back in his or her own supply chain to find out whether the materials of the different parts and in my product And this is usually still done via Excel tables and so on. In our system, that responsibility is shared, which means that it is each stakeholder in the supply chain communicates the bill of material of their specific component. So the product information, the production process information of the material that they add and the production process that happens at their stage. For anything they receive as components, they link the supplier who supplied them with a component on our system, who then provides that information. That means that actually the stakeholders who can answer about the material that has been added in the production process in the supply chain, those are the ones that are actually answering. And we have a smart questioning technology that's through which you can actually get back to that specific stakeholder and ask them questions about it.
1 minute.
Thank you. And that is one of the most important things. That system is decentralized, and it makes sure that the data is stored at the local level on the local servers of the companies, and only the data and the communication travels over the supply chain. So yeah, so just to get back to that again, the smart questioning technology is our patent pending solution, where it is possible that you can scan the QR code on the product and you can ask a question to the product. So in this case, does the product contain halogenated flame retardants? And then that question travels along the supply chain, and you get a reply from each stakeholder of the supply chain, whether the part that they're responsible of basically contains that information. That means they're not sending the full bill of material. They're sending literally the information that you need at that moment, which in the case of, for example, product compositions could also be something like which does it contain, how much aluminum does it contain, how much bromide does it contain, and so on. But it specifically makes sure that the data keeps stored on the local level and only travel and does not ever reach any kind of database or central storage, and that the data that is shared remains fully in the hands of the owning company, who can decide what they share and with whom. And that basically only the amount of data that is shared at that moment is relevant, because obviously a recycler does not need the full bill of material. They often just need recycling information about one specific part of the product. And yeah, that is basically what our system does. It works, we use a public blockchain, because in order to make sure that the trust is there due to blockchain and the data is immutable. And we use zero knowledge proofs and our patent pending zero knowledge smart questioning technology based on zero knowledge proofs in order to ensure the encryption.
Thank you so much,
I'm at the end of my time.
Yeah, you are. Thank you so much, Teresa. Hopefully we'll get back to you. I have a lot of questions for you during the Q&A, so hopefully we'll have some time for that. But to move along, we'll move on to Francesca Poggiali. Please correct me if I pronounce your last name wrong. I'm sorry about that. But she's from GS1 with the role of a public policy director in Europe and co-chairing the Digital for Green at the Alliance for the Internet of Things Innovation. Please have the floor.
Thank you so much, Andreas, and thanks so much to the previous speakers. This is a great session, really. I'm so excited to having co-organized this with you, really. So I'm here today because I have good news, I hope. You have heard the struggle of some of the entrepreneurs, and really, and how excited we all are about, making this possible, making this happening. But the good news is that standards are there, and the standards are available already to at least address some of the fundamental questions that we have also heard from the Commission speakers and from the policy part at the beginning of the session. So I prepared some slides. Let me put them in screen mode just to facilitate, a little bit the debate. So let me share a few words about GS1. GS1 is a global not-for-profit standards body. So our standards are ISO standards, but we only focus on product identification, on data capturing and data sharing. You have heard some of the speakers already saying that the sharing data is a must. Is really one of the pillars of the circular economy, of what is expected also on the Sustainable Product Initiative that the Commission will soon present. So sharing the data is very important, but identifying the data that you need, identifying products in the right way is really the real beginning. So for the purpose of today, I'm not going too much into the capture and the share, but please be aware that the carriers that have been mentioned already, the data metrics and other carriers, of course, are maintained by GS1 because they are open standards. So, but I will focus more on identification today. And whatever I say, you can reach your local GS1 and national level. We have 115 countries all over the world. And but of course, I will be happy also to answer to your all questions. So the standard suite of GS1 cover, as I said, identification, capture, and share. And why would I focus on identification this morning? Because if you identify your products at first in the right way, thanks to the standards, you will enable all the data sharing part that is so important today, that is fundamental for the circular economy. But if you do not identify your products correctly and uniquely, what happened there along the supply chain, but also along a blockchain, along some, sharing solutions that have been mentioned? Well, actually, you are not sharing true data to the point that was, being transparent and being true exactly about your product. So there are standards enabling this. There are global unique identifiers that help companies already since 50 years, because the GTIN, the Global Trade Identification Number of GS1, is exactly 50 this year. So, and those standards enable product identification through a language that all the other economic operators along the supply chain will understand without big efforts, right? It's not like speaking a language that nobody else understands, and they are obliged really to make those to make translations and to go using the global open identifier is really a must. And I'm also trying to make a point for the policy people here involved, because if you reinvent European identifiers for products that are global and for supply chains that are global, basically as Europe, you are just putting the problem at the border. And this is not, I guess, one of the goals that we want to achieve with circularity. We want our companies to be able to compete all over the world, but speaking the same language on product identification. And this is vital also for Europe, because the goods that will be entering need to be identified as well. And if they use this common language, the smooth circulation of goods that was discussed before, was touched upon before, the first part of today, will be a reality. So here we are living an era which is the most important one before things go into a legislation and become maybe in a bureaucratic system. We need to trust companies who can use the standard and who will enable the circularity in the way that they're already doing. You have heard wonderful examples already. So there is no circularity without circular data. And in order to have circular data, you need to have one common language, and this common language is provided by the standards. Everything can be more sophisticated then. I fully understand that there is the need to have global data models that are very sophisticated, that go and pick every single detail, maybe from one side of environmental impact or on the other side. I'm more interested in plastics impact, I'm more interested in CO2 emission. I need to disclose both. Well, there are also standards for data sharing that are open and global that can enable this discussion. And the key project, which was mentioned before, is one of the best examples, because they're also using the GS1 open standards, right? It was mentioned very quickly, but let me repeat it. So we addressed those specific issues into the two documents that you see on the screen, and the presentation will also be available. I will put the link into the chat also as soon as I finish speaking. But what we are also seeing as a need is the ontology side of it. So here we are addressing specific categories of product. We have heard it from the Commission. We understand that textile, electric and electronics, constructions will be first. We know that the batteries are really the first ones, because they all already received the regulation last December. And so we are busy. We signed an MOU with the Global Battery Alliance in order to make the product passport a reality through the standards. The standards also minimize the costs and the time that companies need to dedicate to this. But we see the need for a common ontology. So this is another topic will be addressed. For those of you who are interested, of course, it's not here the time to discuss this, but a common green ontology is also needed, cross-sectorial, to make the language understood by everybody. But we need all stakeholders to speak about this ontology, right? So this is a big effort that is going to be addressed very soon. So one of the questions I very often receive, and it's also on the table today, but how is it going to happen? What's the data architecture that we need to set up all over Europe to make this happening, right? And so the way we see it, there is a possibility through the standard to avoid big bureaucratic entities that will, maybe in the biggest database ever invented, will reconvene all the product data and why. Companies today are really able to put environmental data into a digital twin and share this data with their economic operators. I mean, for me, the policy option should be on the goals that need to be acquired by the product passport. But companies have the means today to share the data through the digital product passport, and maybe also to put URL inside a QR code. I don't want to become too technical, but it is the new standard, the GS1 digital. Yes, if the barcode is open to the internet, right? It's a standard. It's a web standard as well. So you put it, a URL as simple as that, into a barcode. So when you scan the barcode, until today, you had some logistics information because this was what was requested by manufacturers and retailers. You just wanted logistic information, maybe the price, maybe brands information. But now the potential is exactly as the potential of the internet. If you accept a URL into the barcode, this can be pointing to company's website where the product passport will be disclosed. Of course, this will enable the basic product passport exchange, and this will minimize the effort of small and medium enterprises, right? So all this, what I'm describing, is really possible through the standard. So really the efforts that should be put into this should be really minimum. Of course, complex data models are possible, are welcome, and this is also the digital economy, but the standards will enable this fundamental cross-sectorial exchange of information. And we urge these identifiers to be open and global, because if they are not open, let me just spend 1 second on this. If they're not open, Andreas, what will happen will be that proprietary closed data set will be created. Yep. We don't want to believe in Europe that the purpose of the circular economy is to create proprietary data loops. Well, this we have seen them already. We didn't need a circular economy plan to see closed and proprietary data sets, right? So this is why we really need open and global identifiers to uniquely identify your products, so that all the economic operators, I'm a recycler only on plastic, I work only on glass, I can find the information I need in this direct way, right? And this information will stay, because I understand one of the preoccupation of the policymakers is that the data should be there, even if companies disappear in the meantime, even if something happens, because somehow the product data belongs to the circle of the stakeholders then that are involved, including the consumers who bought maybe this product 2 years ago, and they have the right to have access to this information even years after. This will happen through the system we just described. You only need to make flat files available, and this is possible, right? So we have already good examples. You have heard the KEEP project before, and Transparent being a member of the KEEP project. I put some others here on the screen from the food sector, although this is not prioritized, but also from the fashion and the garment sector. We also worked with the United Nations in order to develop the guidelines for sustainable garment, which are now out published on the UN website. We have several, and I already discussed about the batteries initiative. And so we are also taking the battery as the first real example, and we're very excited about already the results that are going on. So just to sum up.
Thank you so much, Francesca. I think we need to move on because the time is running out, or else we won't have time for the last speaker.
All right, please, then
super interesting. And I mean, please get in touch with Francesca, GS1 and Circularize. They are two of the backbone companies that will make the digital passport actually become a reality. So please do reach out to them. They are the ones with the technology as of today, and they will be able to help, propel you towards a more circular future. Also, I would like to mention the KEEP project where both of them are involved. Please do get in touch there. Then it's a common cause instead of just going with either one. So next up is Natalia Lopez, Social Sustainability Manager for Dustin. Please, Natalia, the floor is yours.
Hi, I will not be sharing a PowerPoint presentation.
It's okay.
That just you guys listening to me and asking questions will suffice.
Yeah.
I am actually going to talk a bit more of what goes on, when you are in the factories and what goes on with supply chain sustainability. So as you said, Andreas, I work for a company called Dustin, and we are one of the biggest manufacturers and resellers of IT in the Nordics. And I would like to address some of the needs that we have within supply chain sustainability right now. So Dustin, being both a manufacturer and a reseller, is kind of in a very sweet spot because we can get to see two different sides of the supply chain. And I would say that from the manufacturer's perspective, we have more control over suppliers. However, the work in that is still really not easy. So let me start by going in deeper. Most people who have private labels, they actually source, especially if they're working with electronics, they will source from China. And for starters, there are around 38 million SMEs in China alone. So you can imagine how much work it's needed just for one single country, right? And when it comes to working with small, medium factories, there is very low levels of sustainability awareness, if there is any whatsoever. So when you are the first customer that comes to them and say, hey, these are our sustainability, circularity requirements, you kind of have to sell this business case to them because they still do not see it. So you're like, yeah, when Europe, there's a regulation that's coming in. So if you're not compliant, you're not going to have any single client from Europe. So they're like, okay, we can start with this. And a lot of companies start with a supplier code of conduct and they make sure that it's followed properly. But to do so, you need to have something as capacity building program. And this has to go together with audits. And doing audits in all these suppliers is both time consuming and it's expensive. But it is very much needed if you're working with SMEs. I would have to be very honest. We, for example, at Dustin, we do audits and we have a capacity building program because the audits are going to tell us the status the suppliers have, and the capacity building program would say, okay, these were the problems that came from the audits. This is how you can tackle these problems and become a better factory. So here we see that we need more education from our side to bring that to our suppliers, especially in small, medium factories. So another thing that I also mentioned is that this takes a lot of time. So making an audit would take you anything from 2 to 5 days, depending on how much people are involved. And for you to see the progress of them understanding on what are the requirements and how to improve, I have started to see really good results around 2 years, after 2 years. So it's not like you're going to say, hey, these are our sustainability requirements, we want them done by tomorrow. That's not going to happen. It requires a lot of time and a lot of patience. And many times the tools that we actually have do not even have a local language for the suppliers to work with, which is something that I have seen. If you are in China, you need to have a program that works in Chinese. If you have an app to, give your workers a voice, that has to be in Chinese, because otherwise that is really not going to fly. And another issue that I have seen is that usually the biggest customer for a factory has so much power to set an example. If I had many suppliers say, oh, but your company has such high sustainability requirements, but X brand is okay with how we're doing things now. And they haven't said anything. So then you're like sitting there like, okay, here we are, little Dustin compared to many other big brands out there, and we're having this really big requirement. So I think it's time that we understand that the bigger you are, the more power you have to influence the sustainability and circularity agenda with your suppliers. And going to this, I also want to talk a little bit more about what is collaboration between corporations and companies. And I feel that at this point in time, there's very little collaboration between companies and corporations when it comes to data sharing. Myself, I have audited hundreds of factories, and I have seen many other products, brands, and production floors. And then I go like, wait a minute, if Dustin is such a small customer to them, I can reach out to these others, different brands and say, hey, why don't we have a collaboration? You know, we are here, we're conducting an audit, we can share the audit results. Because what can be a tier 2 for Dustin can be a tier 52 for somebody else.
Yeah.
And when you share information, it actually gives you the opportunity to tackle deeper into your own supply chain and really have a better overview of what's happening there. But what has happened so far is like I have not till today received a positive reply when I reach out to all these other brands and say, hey, would you like for us to cooperate? I've seen your products on this production floor. How about we team up? And they're like, thank you for this, but no, we have the situation under control. And it's a little bit heartbreaking because I feel that right now with everything that's going on all around the world, and especially now that we will have an upcoming EU mandatory human rights due diligence, we need to, come together to act to serve as this collaboration could serve as a good bargaining chip with all of these suppliers around the world. I think the power of 2 or 3 companies working together would always be better than the power of 1. And definitely something that I would like to say is that we have to evolve from the concept of saying, this is my production line in this factory, to saying, what is the impact that I can have in an entire factory if I collaborate with other companies that are sourcing from it? I mean, I have seen it myself. I mean, if there's no collaboration, all this traceability that we're trying to get through, and all this information on responsible manufacturing that would be a part of the EU product passport as well, it's going to be 10,000 times more difficult. And I think that we are at a stage where we don't have the time to make things more difficult, but we need to work together to make things easier. From my perspective, I might get a little bit sensitive on this. I would say good working conditions are not a competitive advantage. It's a basic human right. And we should all make sure that we can safeguard that with more industry and cross-industry collaboration, because we, as Dustins, we are, for example, based in the electronics industry. But for example, the automobile industry is also now getting into electronics, the more electric cars we have. So there's so much room for cross-industry collaboration to have a better impact on the planet. But I would also say, I mean, I think that Francesca was very keen on mentioning the key projects. So I'll have you, Andreas, something you like, if you as a company feel like, hey, you know what, I really agree with everything that's been said today. How can we improve this collaboration and transparency within industries or cross industries? Then something that you can do is, join the key project, I would say, if you're here in Europe. If not, then find a local project that's also working on improving traceability in order to develop the EU product passport, because this is how we will make things happen, and not just from the supply chain sustainability, the social sustainability perspective, but because if we also have a goal of being, climate neutral at some point as a company, you would also need to include that with your tier 3 suppliers, which are on the other side of the world. And definitely that would require a lot of education and collaboration and sharing of best practices, I would say. And not only that, but also sharing of, hey, I say worst practices for lack of a better word, but we tried this and it didn't work. So, put it out there, be honest of what you've done and hasn't worked, and learn from that. And if you have seen that you have had, a factory that doesn't work, even though you try to collaborate with that, learn from that and say, okay, what can we, this is what happened, this is why we're leaving, or, oh, this is why we thought we were leaving, but then they changed their mind. I've seen it a lot in our supply chain when you see a supplier with a lot of problems, they're like, they're never going to fix this. And they actually do, because a lot of them actually are understanding the case for sustainability and circularity and the business case behind it. So definitely, I would say that if I could really, really, really push for something today, is for all of us to collaborate more within the industry and cross-industry.
I think that's a very good point to end the presentations with. Thank you so much, Natalia. We have gotten some questions through the chat function. So we'll jump into a short Q&A session, 5 minutes. Please do post the questions you have in the LinkedIn group as well, because then more people will be able to see the answers later on. So the first question here is from Michael. So this is a question to you, Francesca. The potential with GS1 is huge, seeing as the e-waste stream is different to all of the others. Electronic products are already barcoded, OEM supply chain management, ready to go for improving circularity. How can an e-waste processor access all of the product catalogs already registered with GS1 at a barcode gun at waste recepting? So basically, what I interpret this question to be is like, okay, at the recycling facility, is it possible for them to just use a bar gun to get more information about what the product contains and make informed decision based on that with the GS1 system? What do you think, Francesca?
Sure, yes, Andreas, thank you. And I attempted an answer, which is already in the chat.
Perfect. Sorry, I haven't read the chat yet.
And I have already another question, based on my answer, but that's perfect. I was just reading this and you were focusing, of course, on the rest of the event. Yeah, no worries. As I was saying, the data carriers today can enable the exchange of data based on the attributes that companies found useful until today. Now, circularity is the big new thing, and sustainability as well, right? So once we create tables and where all interested stakeholders sit around the table and say, hey, this standard is very useful, but I would like to have these attributes now to be exchanged as well. And the others will say, yes, it's important, these attributes need to be there. Everybody agrees because this is a common language, right? This needs to become a standard. Then this particular green data element that we are discussing about is included in the data model. And then this can be accessible through the scan. Yes, of course, for e-waste operators. Yes, no doubt. For consumers as well, right? It was one of the other big questions, a big change of circularity, having consumers involved and having access to the data. In some cases, they have really the right to do it and to have it. And so this will be enabled, the magic of the open standards is really to enable the exact group of stakeholders to have access to the exact data attributes that are put in the regulation or that can be exchanged voluntarily as well. Of course, the regulation is now around the corner, so we need to wait for the data set of the regulation, and then we can have additional data attributes. They are always possible. I mean, adding one data attribute is just, our techie people always say, oh, this is just another attribute. Yeah, but it enables millions of then exchanges and transactions and possibility to create more sophisticated data solutions that will enable specific stakeholders group. So really, it's just, yes, the idea is available. I'm just looking at the question, the follow-up questions that I have.
Yeah.
And this person can also reach out more bilaterally. And definitely, yes, it's about evolve the data stream and use it what is available now. Of course, this is not going to change the word. The language will be the same. It's just a question of adding the green attributes. But the green attributes are somehow decided already, if I understand our policymakers, from the first part of this discussion today, they will be also set in the regulation, right? For instance, it was mentioned, I've heard the social impact as well, right? One of the examples that Da Silva gave us was about slavery was about the origin of raw materials. Right, it can be the really the detailed composition of some chemical substances as well, but we need this border, and this is why we're also very happy to see that the institutions of regulators are on board, because they put us the boundaries which will really enable all the discussions, right?
Yeah. Right. Thank you so much for that answer. We're only 5 minutes left, and that means we're going to hand over the floor to the closing remarks by Anna Cavazzini, member of the European Parliament, the chair of Parliament's Consumer Protection Committee. So please, Anna, the floor is yours.
Yeah, thank you so much for the invitation and for the opportunity to give the closing remarks to this very exciting workshop. Because of a full plenary agenda, we are back in Strasbourg. Actually, I couldn't follow the entire debate, but my team was here and will also report back, because indeed, for us as lawmakers, this discussion that you had today, this also going into details, explaining how it could work, is of course very, very, very interesting for us. In principle, I can just say I was in the last 3 weeks really doing kind of circular economy touring through Germany and meeting businesses who are committed to circular economy. And it is so much innovation out there, so much willingness to engage in circular economy, that I think this is probably the first very important message I want to convey, that I guess, yeah, having steps forward into reducing resource use and also closing the material loops is absolutely the way to go. And I think indeed the product passport is a huge cornerstone of such a circular economy that we have to still build up. I know that you were going really much into details, but let me zoom out a tiny little bit to explain you what the European Parliament position so far is. Of course, as we haven't had yet legislation, we are not in the European Parliament at a position yet where we have the exact plan of how a product passport could look like. But we have already in 2 Parliament resolutions clearly voiced our support and basically also demanded the Commission to come up with a product passport, and even made some specifics, for example, in the resolution on the sustainable single market from November 2020. I'm sure you were aware of that one. Yeah, I can probably just quote because it's interesting. We want to improve traceability and access to information on the conditions of production of a product, durability, composition, reuse, repair, dismantling possibilities, and end-of-life handling. So the Parliament is of the very clear position that we want a product passport that has all the information. And next to these 2 resolutions, one on the sustainable single market, the other one on the circular economy action plan a little bit later, that we voted on, we also have the first very concrete legislation on circular economy on our desks. That is the battery regulation. And I'm sure you also addressed this today, where there is basically already some slight sides of a product passport in. I am, for example, shadow of my group, the Greens, IFA, in the IMCO committee, and I'm with really via my amendments. Actually, the deadline is tomorrow. We still try to strengthen actually the language on a product passport in the battery regulation to really make sure that there is an interface with all the online information that consumers, but also, of course, repairers and everyone else needs. So the battery regulation will be voted in plenary most likely in February. And yeah, we will hope that the Commission comes up beforehand already with some concrete horizontal legislation on the product passport. And I think this year and the beginning of the next year will definitely be some exciting times for yeah, having a step further in the circular economy. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Anna. And thank you to all the participants and the speakers who's been joining this EU Circular Talks on the digital passports. Please do continue the discussion in the LinkedIn group and continue asking questions where the different speakers that attended this event will be able to answer them. And with that, I would just like to close and say a big thank you and have a good the rest of your day. Bye-bye.